Millhaven, 1882. In the West, they don't take a house by burning it down immediately. They kill it slowly, starting with the heartbeat in the lungs, the water source. Grace Ward awoke before dawn, not to the sound of robbers' hooves, but to the thirst of her livestock. The only ditch leading from the South Range to her land had been filled in overnight. On the fence post, a smudged black inscription pinned beneath a knife. 3 days left. Sign the sale, or water will not be the only thing gone. Samuel, her husband, had died protecting this land, and now they wanted to strip away a lifetime of honor with a deadly silence. Widow Ward's enemies were not hidden in the shadows. That morning, Harvey Baines, the local banker, cut off all credit lines. The loan was suddenly called for early repayment. 10 days. If there was no money to pay, the bank would seize the entire Ward ranch. Without water, the cattle would die before sunset on the 3rd day. Without the cattle, the land would be taken by the 10th day. They cornered her. The same chilling whispers, enough to make her understand that blood would be spilled if she didn't let go of the contract. Just then, Eli Kane emerged from the shadows. He was a wandering gunman. The horses had drunk enough water, and the northbound road awaited him. He had never known how to stop. But when he saw the woman's eyes, no pleading, only the weary resilience of someone who had endured alone for too long, his steps faltered. He didn't draw his gun. A deathly silence was enough to draw a line. The woman didn't say thank you. She looked at him with the eyes of someone who understood the price of violence. "I need someone who knows how to keep a ranch alive for 10 more days," she said. The vagabond, always trying to escape, now stood before a woman who refused to back down. That was the paradox of the West. "Buy me breakfast," he replied. "Then tell me who's trying to kill it." But when Eli touched the debt notice, he realized his opponents weren't just the thuggish ranchers. Chief Sheriff Amos Reed's signature was prominently displayed on the paper, and the ink hadn't even dried yet. The foreclosure order had been legally signed before the loan actually came due. The town has been sold off, and the manhunt has only just begun. In a secluded corner of the diner, Grace Ward told the vagrant about what she was betting her life on. Not just an empty plot of land, but 15 years of blood and sweat. Her husband, Samuel, had died 3 years earlier from a terrible fever following the flood season. When a man falls in the West, vultures swarm around. Everyone assumed Widow Ward would sell, but she didn't. She kept 3 workers, negotiated the price of cattle herself, and paid her debts month by month. And that resilience offended the greed of those in power. For the past 6 months, an invisible noose had tightened around her neck. The cattle traders began to ruthlessly drive down prices. The sheriff turned a blind eye when her fence was cut in the night. And then Silas Crow appeared. A man who owned no farm, yet controlled the fear of an entire region. He didn't rob with guns. He used violence to force people to voluntarily sign papers selling their land. 3 ranches around the South Range had collapsed in just 4 months. All had fallen into the hands of a mysterious land company registered in St. Louis. Ward Ranch was the last line of defense. Eli looked at the widow. "What do you fear losing most? Your house, your cattle, or your land?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Grace didn't blink. I fear the day people say Samuel died for something not worth keeping. That was the moment Eli realized she hadn't hired him to kill. She hired him to buy more time. Time to prove ownership and time to fight for herself. But in Millhaven, kindness was a luxury that had to be kept secret. Ruth Bell, the grocery store owner, secretly slipped a piece of paper into Grace's hand. A warning from the shadows. Someone is searching for the water rights map, the only document proving South Range Stream belongs to Ward Ranch. "12 miles south" told Eli a story the town had deliberately kept hidden. In the midst of a life-draining drought, Ward Ranch still flourished, and the wanderer immediately understood the core of all the crimes: water. The enemy didn't need this pasture. They needed the stream flowing through it to supply the railroad system that was about to reach it. But the tranquility of a ranch is sometimes the most perfect lie. The eyes of a frontier survivor didn't look at the main house, but read the tracks as if reading a map of violence. A new section of fence post had been replaced, but the angle of the post was significantly off from the old one. The shack door bolt had been tightened from the outside. And hoofprints circled around the haystack, not the familiar tracks of the ranch's horses. Someone had leisurely strolled here, measuring the place's Achilles heel. Inside the house, Grace rummaged through Samuel's wooden box. The tax receipts were still there, the ledger was still there. But the most important document, the map outlining priority water resources, was gone. She was speechless. Not from fear of robbers, but from a chilling truth that ran down her spine. The enemy hadn't just knocked on the door. They had infiltrated the house itself. That night, no shots were fired. But from the barn attic, Gus Hale, the farm's most loyal old worker, saw a small flame flickering in the western mountains. They weren't hiding anymore. They were sitting there, looking down at this verdant oasis, waiting for their prey to collapse from exhaustion. But they didn't know that Grace Ward had just brought home a lone wolf. To expose a rotten town, he didn't need to draw a gun. He just needed to know how to look at things that didn't belong to it. An expensive thoroughbred horse stood in the public stable. Its owner is Sheriff Amos Reed. He bought it exactly 6 months ago, coinciding with the time the Silas Crow gang arrived in the area. In Millhaven, greed was unseen. It wore its badge and grazed on the blood money of the weak. While Eli was sending a telegram to an old acquaintance at the federal land office, Grace was waging her own battle. In the shallow ditch, she realized the stones used to block the water weren't alluvial stones. They were sharp-edged slate, found only in the western ravine, the land occupied by Silas Crow's men. The irrefutable evidence shattered Tommy Vale's last shred of courage. The boy trembled as he confessed. He had taken money from Crow's gang to leak Gus's guard schedule, but he swore he had never stolen the map of the water rights. Faced with the man who had betrayed her home, Grace had every right to dismiss him or hand him over to Eli's gun, but she wouldn't let betrayal turn her into a ruthless person. She chose to keep him. She forced it to sleep in a cage, made it work under Gus's gunfire, and manually raked away each boulder to reopen the ditch. A woman on the frontier knew revenge is easy, but survival requires every helping hand. That afternoon, the reply telegram from the federal government revealed a chilling truth. The shell company in St. Louis had absolutely no interest in the grass or the cattle. Behind them was a massive railroad corporation. And what they truly wanted to devour was the water. Ward Ranch wasn't just a beautiful piece of land. It held the priority rights to the only stream that supplied water to the entire South Range during the dry season. Grace was stunned to remember Samuel's dying words. Land keeps the house, but water keeps the person. Her husband wasn't naive. He knew the town office was corrupt, and he had hidden the only copy of the water rights document in an unexpected place. They had found the shield protecting the ranch, but evil never gives people time to celebrate. A dry wind swept across the prairie, carrying the acrid smell of death. The hay storage for the winter crop, the lifeblood of the entire herd, is ablaze. On the brink of life and death, Eli witnessed a strength he had never seen in any man he had ever protected. Grace Ward did not flee. She did not abandon her legacy to the flames. She charged in to save it. Her unwavering resolve awakened even the most cowardly souls. Tommy Vale, the boy who had betrayed the ranch, plunged into the inferno with his bare hands to atone for his mistake. They saved the map and half the hay stockpile, but the price was utter exhaustion. The ranch was visibly weakened, and the vultures always smelled blood. The next morning, the town's authorities knocked, not to investigate the arson, but with an emergency sealing order declaring Widow Ward not legally capable of managing disputed property. Guns can defend against assassins at night, but how can a wandering gunman shoot through a law that has been bought off? The law is sometimes just a piece of paper wrapped around the barrel of a gun held by the wealthy. The sealed order clearly stated that Grace Ward had to leave the house immediately because she was unable to pay her debts. But glancing at the date, Grace noticed a fatal error. The signing date was backdated even before Harvey Baines officially demanded payment. Eli was ready to stain the farm with blood, a place where vultures could legally seize everything. But Grace stepped forward and pushed his hand down. She wouldn't let him turn her farm into a crime scene, a place where vultures could legally seize everything. The widow didn't fight with guns. She defended her honor with documents, memories, and a chillingly clear-cut transparency. The taxes were paid in full. The debts were paid on time every month. And the map of her legitimate land ownership was a slap in the face to the creditor. Faced with local witnesses, the sheriff didn't dare to use force. They were forced to back down. Tommy Vale, a former traitor, has now bravely stepped forward to stop Harvey Baines. A belated but powerful act of redemption. Before leaving, Amos Reed growled one last warning. Tonight, Silas Crow's patience would run out. The enemy had unmasked themselves. Eli offered to take Grace away to save her life, but she refused. If I leave even for one night, tomorrow morning they will declare this land ownerless, she said. The wanderer looked at her, understanding. An absolute trust formed between them. She believed he wouldn't pull the trigger and ruin the whole thing. And he believed she knew exactly when to stand up. That night, they weren't prepared to win. They turned the farm into a fortress just to survive. But Silas Crow was a cunning old fox. He didn't attack the steel armor of the house. He struck at the heart of the farm. His men cut through the fence, driving the cattle to a frantic pace toward the narrow, rocky gorge. If they went in there in the dark, dozens of them would break their legs. Without the herd of cattle, Grace would be bankrupt the very next morning without needing any forged documents. In the dust storm, Grace plunged into danger to save her livelihood. Eli didn't play the hero to protect her. He stood by her side, guarding her blind spots so she could fulfill her duties as a farm owner. When a sniper's muzzle was aimed at Grace's back, Eli pulled the trigger. But the bullet didn't kill the enemy. It only disarmed him. On the brink of life and death, the wandering killer chose mercy. He wanted Grace to see that he wasn't a bloodthirsty monster. They saved most of the cattle, but the West always demands a price. A long-serving working horse had its leg broken. Gus's merciful gunshot ripped through the night. It was the first clear loss. Grace knelt beside the animal's body, her grief so intense she couldn't even cry. Eli stood beside her. No sweet words of comfort were uttered. Love in the borderlands doesn't blossom with vows of eternal love. It begins with shared silence and shared suffering amidst the ashes and death. On the neck of the unfortunate animal, Eli found a piece of leather engraved with Silas Crow's insignia. No more anonymous threats. No more fraudulent scraps of paper. This was a declaration of war in blood. And tomorrow morning, when the darkness recedes, the specter of slaughter will knock on Ward Ranch's door. The devil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it cloaks itself in the calm of a businessman. Silas Crow brought 6 gunmen with the cowardly backing of the town's bureaucracy standing afar. He issued a chilling ultimatum. Sign the land and water rights this afternoon. Otherwise, tomorrow morning, the bank will seize the house, the sheriff will seal the ranch, and the cattle will be foreclosed. Grace looked up at the gang leader. Why would someone like you care about water rights? Crow smirked. Because water is the only thing in this region that makes men kneel and still call it law. Grace refused to sign. Crow then turned to the vagrant, opening a wide path for him to reach. This job isn't worth dying for a widow and a few pieces of paper, Crow whispered. But Eli responded only with silence, a silence as heavy as lead. And in that moment, the old fox Silas Crow realized something extremely dangerous. This emotionless gunman had begun to care. That night, Grace gave him one last chance to escape. She feared he would perish in a war that wasn't his own. If you leave, I won't call it betrayal. But the wanderer replied with a stark truth. I've left many towns, but I've never left a man who holds water for an entire region. They didn't exchange a kiss, no vows. Grace simply handed him her late husband's gun. In the Wild West, that was the most profound declaration of love, the surrender of one's life. But they didn't wait until the next morning. Silas Crow sensed the resistance. He accelerated the raid by a day. 12 dark figures descended from the embankment, splitting into 3 ruthless prongs. One group dragged Eli out into the yard, another set fire to the remaining hay storage, and the final group circled around the back door to seize the map. The farm was shrouded in gunfire. But this wasn't a senseless slaughter, but a desperate struggle for survival. Gus held the northern line. Tommy, the one who had betrayed the farm, now gambled his life to protect every blade of grass. And Eli stood in the middle of the yard. He didn't pull the trigger to kill everyone, but to disrupt the rhythm of the attack. Because, in the West, a true gunman knows that the more indiscriminately one fires, the faster death comes. Every bullet must be counted. Silas Crow entered the main house by himself. He didn't need to kill Grace immediately. He needed her signature and the box of papers. He believed that if she died, it would be called a murder. If she signs, it will be a legal transaction. Eli lunged forward, his gun aimed precisely at the enemy's head. He was ready to finish off the devil, but the box on the table was just a decoy. The real map of the country's sovereignty had been sewn into Tommy's coat the night before. Grace stopped the vagrant. "If he dies here," she snarled, "they'll call it a gunfight. But if he lives to reveal the mastermind, they'll have to call it a crime." She didn't choose revenge, she chose justice, a decision that forced Eli to lower his gun. Crow tried to fire a sneak attack, but Gus's shielded bullet from outside the window pierced his shoulder. The power of the shadows officially crumbled. The federal forces led by Owen Bell arrived. Eli's telegram had finally worked. They hadn't come to save Widow Ward's life. They had arrived just in time to turn bloodshed into legal proof. The corrupt mayor was stripped of his badge. The hidden capitalists were finally exposed. Ward Farm had won. But it was a bitter victory. Eli slumped on the steps, blood trickling from his side. Grace knelt down and bandaged him. "I thought you hired me to guard the ranch," he said with a wry smile. "I hired you to buy time," she replied, clutching the cloth tightly. "The rest is my job." The brilliant dawn shone on their dust-covered faces. But for a wanderer, when it was over, the old road began to call. The battle was over, but the West didn't have perfect fairy tale endings. Half the barn was charred black, the fence crumbled, and the bank debt still hung in the balance, waiting to be due. They didn't say that Widow Ward had been saved. They said that Ward Ranch had reclaimed its right to survive. The neighbors, once silent with fear, now brought shovels and wood. They understood that Grace hadn't just kept water for herself. She had kept the lifeblood flowing for the entire South Range. The water that had been dammed up now flowed again, muddy, small, but persistent. Eli Kane was strong enough to mount his horse. His wanderlust kicked in. It was time to leave before this land became a root that bound him. Grace didn't cry. She didn't beg him to stay with tearful words. She accompanied him to the final fence. "Don't turn back out of pity," she said, her gaze fixed on him. "Only turn back if there's a part of you that truly wants to stop running." The wanderer gazed at the devastated land, yet still resiliently surviving. He saw the people who had shed blood for freedom. "I don't know how to stay," he confessed, a stark truth of someone accustomed to abandonment. Grace smiled faintly, the rarest and warmest smile since they first met. "Then learn to return first." Eli left before sunrise. Just as he had left 100 towns before, he walked into the darkness. But this time, the darkness wasn't thick with solitude. On the second floor window, a lamp had been lit. She knew he would leave, but she left a glimmer of light, not to illuminate the path for the fugitive, but to mark a place for those who longed to return. Eli Kane continued northward. The old road awaited, with new battles, new towns. For half his life, he had never looked back after leaving. He always moved forward, trying to shake off the past. But this time, atop the windswept hill, the wanderer pulled on the reins. He glanced back. That tiny light still flickered in the harsh frontier. Ahead lay the boundless north. But for the first time in his life, his South had a name. The story of Widow Ward and the Wanderer ends here. In the West, sometimes a victory isn't defined by how many enemies you kill, but by how much honor you preserve for your land. Before you leave the camp tonight, tell me, where in the world are you listening to this story from? Leave your country or city in the comments. Let's see how far our footprints have traveled. And if you still want to continue your journey along the dusty frontier, the next story awaits you right on your screen. Click on it. See you on the trail.